It's time to suit up. Here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
Welcome to Suit Up Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout, along with 10-year NFL vet Frank Garcia. Frank, how you doing?
I'm doing good, buddy. It's been a long weekend and very eventful one. A lot to talk about.
Man, I tell you what, the games Saturday were both really good basketball games. Even as Duke fans, and the epic collapse that Duke had. Still, if you're a fan of basketball, there's not many better endings than the Houston Duke game and what Houston and that team did to come back. And again,
it depends on what side of the
we'll dive into that. And then Florida, Auburn. Auburn gets off like they had so many times this year to a great start in the first half, and then Florida seems to wake up in the second half. Clayton, who's kind of become the star of this tournament that I think a lot of people didn't know about before the tournament. 34 points. And we talked about how people compare his game to Steph as far as shot making and the way he can shoot the three. And we saw it again with literally him, getting a rebound and just dribbling back to the 3-point line, and just firing up threes and nailing them. Also had a huge play towards the end of the game where he split the defenders and went in for a layup. There's nobody in the country that's been playing better than him during this tournament, and now they're in the championship against Houston. Let's start with the Florida game, because I know the Duke game we're going to dive a lot deeper into. Again, they had played before this year. Florida had beat them pretty good in Auburn, and then we get to this game, and Auburn in the first half looked great. I mean, they looked so good that I think a lot of people thought that Florida was done. Like Auburn was just playing so well, and Florida was struggling a little bit. But then the second half was a whole different ball game.
Yeah, it sure was. I mean, Florida made some adjustments at halftime. Auburn was hitting a lot of shots in the beginning of the game. They were playing great defense. It was a very physical game, back and forth. And then ultimately, it just kind of felt like Florida had some momentum plays, and they had a player that stood up and stood out and took over the game with his ability to drive or hit the threes. So, it was a couple of balls bounced the right way for Florida, and maybe Auburn didn't get some breaks, but that's the way that when you're playing two evenly matched teams, you're going to go back and look at that game, especially down the stretch in those quality minutes, and say these are the plays that we needed to make that to win the game that we didn't, and they did. These are the shots we needed to hit, and we did. They didn't, type of thing. And it literally comes down to probably about a handful of plays throughout those key minutes that you can look back on and say that under the pressure in the clutch situations, they delivered and we didn't. And that's the reason why, if you're an Auburn fan, Florida's going through. They played better in the crucial moments.
Yeah. And, we mentioned on Friday how Mazzara was going to have to play a lot better if Auburn had a chance to win. And the kid played great. 18 points was a huge factor. And then the other thing is, Broome, who said before the game that he felt 100%, he wasn't 100%. You saw him grab his arm a few times. And look, you got to give credit to the kid. He's tough and he played, but he obviously wasn't right. He still, I think, had 18 or 20 points, but definitely wasn't the same player that we're used to seeing watching Auburn play this year. So it kind of stinks, especially if you're an Auburn fan, that he wasn't 100%. And like I said, I think there was 3 or 4 different times where you saw him kind of grab his arm as if it was hurting him. So Bruce Pearl comes up short again, and Florida now is in the national championship. I know they were a very popular pick when people were filling out their brackets. I know I have them to win in a couple of mine, but I had them beating Duke, and Duke is not going to be there.
No.
Duke kind of a similar story with Auburn. Duke plays really well in the first half, but when Houston couldn't score, we just kept saying, man, Duke's letting them hang around. Duke should be up by 20 and they're up by 8. They should be up by 22 and they're only up by 5. I mean, they just let them hang around. And the player that we talked about going into this game, and we've mentioned him pretty much every big game in this tournament, is Proctor. And Proctor's had a great season, great kid, love him as a player, but he's going to get a lot of wide open shots. And when he hits, Duke's not going to lose. And in this game, he couldn't shoot. He was 2 for 8. He was only 3 for 5 from the free throw line. And one of the questions that I have, and look, everyone agrees that Shire did a great job. He's a great coach. So I'm not saying this as a backhand slap to Shire. But I did wonder when Proctor was obviously not on his A game. And we watched the game together, and we both were saying, get him out of the game. Let's try somebody else. I don't understand why Shire didn't put Isaiah Evans in there, and he played 2 minutes the entire game. Like, when you're having a trouble, you scored one field goal in the last 10 minutes of the game. One. You've got a kid on the bench that's instant offense, and I bet they would probably say Proctor's a much better defender, and I would agree with that.
Well, he's taller. He's longer.
But when you're not
experienced.
scoring, then at least try to let this kid get in there and fire a few shots up. If he gets hot like he did against Auburn earlier in the year, he won the game for him. The fact he played 2 minutes, I don't understand. And then the other thing that was kind of a disappointment was we've been raving about how great Maliwatch has been playing, and he has. He did not have one rebound this game, not one. Like
Houston did a great job boxing him out, pushing him around, and that's the biggest difference between men and boys, right? That's where when you're a 7'1" guy and you're a 18-year-old kid, you're playing against 23, 24-year-old men that have played in the SEC that are used to boxing guys out and pushing people around. They're playing against bigger people, occasionally, but they're going to understand how to play. And that's where you give all the credit in the world to Houston for devising a game plan to not get those easy buckets. They were going to make you work for every basket that you had. And, you talk about the rotation and, maybe playing some other guys differently. There was a time in that game where the bench for Duke was playing really well. They got up to like 15-point lead, and guys coming off the bench were playing great. They were playing so well that you could even make an argument that you wouldn't want to take them out, especially when you saw, with your eyes, that a guy like Proctor was struggling. And I think that's where maybe the youth of a young coach is going to make some decisions based on, maybe not a lot of experience in those situations, but, kind of more of this is supposed to be our guy. We've said he's going to be our guy. He's a junior. He's our leader, et cetera, where, he's just not playing very well. Yeah. And that's okay, right? Some games, guys have bad games. This was one of those games for Proctor, because without Proctor, I don't know if Duke would have made it as far.
No, they wouldn't have. Yeah.
He played as well throughout this tournament as any other player did. Especially when you see a guy going down, your star player, he stepped up in those moments against some of these other teams in order for them to get here. But in this game, right, and we all saw that. And I'm sure that, the Shire saw that. But why, if that's the case, design offense for a guy like Knipple or somebody off the bench that was maybe more adept or capable of going out there and hitting shots? Because I maybe you're hoping that he's going to catch lightning because you've seen it before. And at the end of the day, it just really comes down to Houston made shots, 3-point shots to get them back in the game. There was a big foul that kind of swung the momentum. It was about 2.5-3 minutes to go in the game with the flagrant one, where they got 2 shots and the ball back, and they had an opportunity to really close that gap. But that's where really the momentum started changing in this game. And then you got to about 2 minutes to go, and Duke is up 9, right? And Houston had the ball. They come down. Duke's playing great defense. They're up 9 with 2 minutes to go. And then they have a historical collapse. Listen to this stat. I mean, this is not just a collapse. It's a collapse, an all-time collapse. Duke became the first team to lose a tournament game with a higher field goal percentage than Houston. They had more free throw attempts than Houston. They had fewer turnovers than Houston. They had more assists than Houston, and they had more steals. Up until this point, there's been 335 games that have been played where those stats exist. You know how many teams have won when you've had those stats on your side?
335.
335. Duke is the only team to not win with those stats in their favor. That's how historical the collapse this was, for a team that we expected to be in the national championship game, because throughout that game, it really wasn't that close. Duke dominated most of that game. I give all the credit in the world to Houston for fighting and hanging in there and scrapping and doing everything they could to continue. And you knew that they weren't going to go away.
No.
Watching that game, you knew they were going to make a run. They just made a run at the wrong time if you're Duke.
Well, I watched, all day I was watching coverage, and I was watching interviews with Kelvin Sampson and some of the Houston players, and then some of the analysts who have followed Houston throughout the season and saw the majority of their games. And, every single interview, every single analyst said the same thing. Toughest team in the tournament. Kelvin Sampson's maybe the best coach in the tournament. Has plenty of experience, NBA, college, all this stuff. How great of kids he has on this team. A family affair. His son and daughter work for him, Kelvin Sampson. And by the time the game was ready to start, I'm like, okay, can we not see any more interviews with Houston? I'm sure the same way other people are going, can we stop hearing how this Duke team is maybe the best team ever? You get sick of that stuff. But I'll be darned. Everything they said about Houston was true, and you're right. Duke, when they should have been able to blow that lead out to 20, they never could do it. And the next thing you know, it'd be whittled down to 6. And then they go back up to 11, they'd will it down to this. And so we never, as Duke fans, we were never comfortable. I certainly wasn't. I never felt like we had this game in the bag. Now, when we were up 9 points with 2 minutes left, I'm thinking, all right, especially when Proctor goes to the free throw line and he misses the first end of that one-on-one.
Well, that was when after they had closed it down, and it got to about 3 points, and 2 points. It got to a 2-point lead or 1 point lead, wherever it was. He missed the front end of the 1-and-1, and on the front end of the 1-and-1. That's where the biggest controversy for a lot of people, if you're a Duke fan, is going to come in. And I know that the biggest thing that you and I both hate are the whining Carolina fans or the whining, fans that want to blame the refs for everything. This isn't something you blame the refs on, but this is something that impacted the game.
Right.
I blame the game and the loss on Duke, but this play and this call absolutely impacted this game to a point where the National Player of the Year goes up for a loose ball, is getting boxed out and tips the ball, and the referee blows a whistle for over the back. Right now,
Yep.
Did he impact him? Did he impede him? Those are the things that are debatable. But the way the game was being played at that point, with the physicality on both ends, with guys boxing out, pushing guys in the back, the reffing really hadn't been an issue up until that point. They did a good job. Why all of a sudden are you going to take your whistle out and change the outcome of a game with one whistle, where you're sending their team to the free throw line with a 1 point, down one? And you give Houston all the credit in the world because they made both of their free throws.
Sure did.
And then, they played great defense where, Duke had an opportunity to win it at the end with Flagg and the best player, to make up for that. But I think we all kind of felt the momentum and the win when Houston took the lead. I think we all felt like this game was over because there was no continuity on the offensive side. And to me, that's where I'm going to look at a guy like Shire and say, that's where the inexperience cost them. The inbounds plays, the lack of inbounds plays, the plays designed up. It was everybody run down, run back, and try to scramble and get open. Houston was grabbing, holding, and guarding. No fouls there. But you can't just impact the game with that type of call. But that's where Shire, in my opinion, had to, maybe take a timeout. Let's regroup. Let's come up with a great play. He didn't throw the ball off the backboard. They did. The team did. So I don't know if that was even a great play because it was just going to be a lob over the defensive players as he was fronting, Cooper Flagg from getting the ball. He was going to try to throw it high so he could go out and rebound and use his length, but the ball hit the backboard. So, if that's the best play you came up with, then that's the problem.
Well, and that's the thing too. And again, it's fair to question a guy like Shire, even though we've praised him all year. He deserves it. And we think he's going to be a great coach. He is a great coach. But you're right. There were some moments in this game. One, I did wonder why he didn't get Isaiah Evans in there and let him see if he can get hot when they couldn't score a basket. Number two, you said the inbounds play. We couldn't get the ball in bounds. We call a timeout. and then we couldn't get it in again, right? And that was a pivotal moment. And yes, we can say Houston was playing great defense, but at the same time, especially since we didn't get it in the first time, you would think Shire would have a chance to go, okay, this is what they were doing. Let's run this play or something. So I think that was definitely an issue.
Calling your lifeline. Right? Coach K is sitting over there on the sideline. Can I phone a friend?
Coach K is like sending him a little note.
Can I phone a friend here for this? Just call a friend. I got the $1 million question at me. I just want to phone a friend to make sure that I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
Call Coach K. He's over there on the sideline. And, I obviously, that was a big factor in the game. The other thing that was a big factor in that game is how stagnant the offense became.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I know, up 9, you're thinking, okay, let me put the ball in my best player's hand. Right. But Cooper Flagg was the only guy that scored, and he was really the only guy that touched the ball. You're trying to eat clock and run possession and not thinking Houston is going to just go down there and get lights out from the beyond the arc, because they hadn't been all game. But when it counted,
they were hitting.
I mean, that bucket opened up like the Red Sea.
It sure did. And the foul call on Flagg, you're right. Like, and even the analysts after the game, everyone agrees that it was a horrible call. It wasn't a foul. Should have been a no call at best.
Play on.
Yeah, play on.
It's a loose ball. You're both going for it.
Yeah.
The defensive guy.
And we don't even know that Duke would. If you watch the replay, even if they didn't call a foul, when the ball bounced, there was a Houston guy there. And
Houston grabbed the ball.
Yeah, so Houston would have got the ball anyway.
Houston had the ball.
They would have just had to score.
But they wouldn't have went to the free throw line to get free shots.
Exactly.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
You could still play defense, and there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee that Duke was going to stop them on the defensive side.
Yep.
They could have still gone out there and had the same result, but that's not the point. The point is that the referee impacted the game with a bad call. If you look at the replay and you go back and you watch it, the Houston player that's backing up into Flagg, hooking him on one side and holding him on the other, which is, that's a good box out. That's let him play. That's a physical game. That's what you're going to do in a box out. All right, that's part of the game. But when the foul was called, the Houston player turned around and looked at the ref.
It was on him.
Thought it was on him.
Yeah.
So that's how how do you determine one way or the other that's a foul?
Yeah,
when the Houston guy, when the whistle's blowing, turns around, that's on me. And then when they called it on Cooper, he was like, "Oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do about this?"
Well, and that's the thing. At that point in the game, let the play. Like you said, the referees for the most part. There was a couple calls that Duke had a couple go their way. Houston had a couple go their way. But like you said, the officiating really wasn't an issue. And to make that call at that point in the game on that type of play, you're right. It stinks that that's the way it went down. Houston would have had the ball anyway, and maybe they went down and get a basket. Maybe they do, but like you said, at least they would have had to go get it. And again, credit to them for hitting the free throws.
But the stagnant offense is another thing that we can sit here and talk about.
Yeah.
Giving the ball to Flagg and letting him go dribble the ball out, hold it, hoping that they fouled him, doubling him and then passing it to Proctor, fouling Proctor, and then him going up there and missing the front end. Knipple should have been, in my opinion, because he was the hot player.
He was
the other hot player.
5 for 9 from the field. He was hitting his threes.
He was the other, and he's going to be a great NBA prospect.
Sure,
he's been good all year. He's the best free throw shooter you have. Why is the ball not going to him equally in those moments where you give it to Proctor and just Proctor didn't have that? He just had a bad game, and that's the reason why Houston's moving on.
And that's the other thing. Gillis got 6 minutes of playing time. Like, why are you putting Gillis in there? He hasn't been good the entire tournament. I mean, he really hasn't done anything all year. Like, again, why not give Evans a chance to get in there and see if he can get hot? Or Foster played really good.
Foster played Foster played lights out.
Yeah, and I mean, he didn't score this game, but everything else he did. He controlled the ball. He ran the offense. He has scored leading into this tournament. So, he had 13 minutes, but I don't understand why Gillis got 6 minutes and why Proctor got 38 minutes. I mean, Proctor's got 38 of the 40 possible minutes, and Evans got 2 minutes. So there could be stuff behind the scenes that we don't know about either, but I don't see how you at least don't get that kid in there, because he has won games for you this year by getting hot and carrying you for moments of time. And when let me ask you this, I don't remember, and I didn't research this, so I don't know how many times this has happened, but I don't ever remember a team going in the last 10 and a half minutes of a game only scoring one basket. Like, I really can't remember, especially a team like Duke, like a really, really good team that has all these players that can score. Now, you can give a lot of credit to Houston's defense, and they absolutely deserve it because their defense is really, really good. But for a team like Duke, who people were putting up there. We were too. It's one of the best Duke teams that we've seen. And to go 10 and a half minutes with one basket, you got to think that somebody hits and Flagg was missing some of those little intermediate shots that he normally makes. He missed a big one towards the end of the game that could have put Duke back in the lead, I believe, or extended. I forget what it was, but
there was many opportunities at the end of the game for them, and I don't even want to call it settling, where they had open looks from the outside. Houston was packing in the paint, trying to stop Malawatch from getting the layups and the alley-oops and the rebounds. They were going to eliminate him from this game. They took him out of it by the way that they packed the paint. And their game plan was pack the paint, run our bigs out at the shooters so that they were going to impact those threes. Nobody other than Flagg was willing to pull the trigger. Proctor had a wide open look. They ran at him and he took it off the dribble and started to drive and either missed the shot or bounced it off his leg. There was multiple times that he did that.
Yep.
So under the pressure, it felt like Duke was impacted a lot more than what Houston was. Houston was applying the pressure. Duke was feeling the pressure at the end of the game. And when you're feeling the pressure, you're going to make a lot more mistakes and become a freshman-oriented team with little experience when you're feeling that pressure versus when you're applying that pressure. And applying the pressure doesn't necessarily mean, just dribbling the ball and taking it to the bucket and hoping you get a foul. Referees weren't calling fouls at that point. Duke had done that multiple times and we're missing. Take the shot.
Yeah,
that's the
Flagg
make the right basketball play.
Shots as well.
Make the right basketball play. Flagg had the same opportunity at the end of the game. Nobody for Duke wanted to settle or take the right basketball play. They were trying to create something different. And whether it was going to the line, whether it was trying to hit a layup, whether it was the alley oop, they were penetrating because that's what they hit. Houston put them in a position to make those plays, to make those shots, and Duke was refusing to take them.
When you mentioned how when Duke ran their offense a lot of the times towards the second half, and they've done this all year, but again, when they weren't making baskets and their offense was stagnant and they would give Flagg the ball at the top of the key, he'd hold the ball and then he'd try to create something. It reminded me of back when the Charlotte Hornets were here and their head coach was Alan Bristow, and we had Larry Johnson on the team. And at the end of a half or a quarter, time running down, whatever, they would run a play they called Dallas, and Larry Johnson was from Dallas. That's why they called it that. And they would give Larry the ball at the top of the key, and he would hold it until the clock goes down. And then he would try to create a basket or get fouled or whatever. And they would do that all the time towards the end of with 10 seconds left or whatever it was. I thought Duke went to that way too early, and maybe that was Shire just going, he's our best player. He's going to figure out a way to, because he's such a great passer. He'll figure out a way to either get to the basket, shoot, or distribute. And I can understand that, but I did think they went to that a little too early. And then you mentioned it. Knipple was hitting. I mean, he had a great game and he only shot 9 times. If I'm Shire, Flagg shot 19 times, okay? Proctor shot 8 times. So Knipple only took one more shot than Proctor. Proctor was 0 for 4 from three-point land. Knipple has got to get more shots than that. And again, you
if not, then at least have Evans out there that you're going to clean up the paint.
Yeah.
Duke did not make shots when they counted.
Yep.
And that's the bottom line.
And they let Houston hang around.
They let Houston hang around. But even if you remember and recall back into these big momentum changes and swings, Foster has been the guy that was wide open on the outside from the wing.
He's been great this
and
tournament.
had knocked those shots down with the wide open look that quelled the momentum changing run that the other team was having, whether it was Arizona, you fill in the blank on the teams that they were making runs. Foster would get the ball over there and found himself in a wide open look and knock it down. And it would kind of eliminate the momentum shift that was taking place. It happened big time against Arizona, where he hit a huge 3-pointer down the line, down at the end of the game. Nobody else for Duke was willing to take that shot. And I understand why Proctor wouldn't, because he wasn't feeling it. And if that's the case, in my opinion, he shouldn't have been in the game. You could have had Knipple, you could have had Evans, you could have had any one of the other players, Sion James, any of the other guys that's going to, make a play and at least give yourself an opportunity. And it just is very disappointing. 335 times that Duke is the first team to lose with those stats on their side.
And, Houston has lived in tight games all season. They've been in tight games all year long. That was their deal. They played close games. Duke, we had talked about, and a lot of people worried that Duke could really not play that many tight games. And then against Arizona, it got tight, and Duke, held on and played well under pressure and won the game. But you could tell that Houston was never worried about being out of this game. Even when they were down 10 or 15, it didn't take long for them to get it back down. And then Duke helped them by not making shot after shot after shot. But one of the things that I was thinking about during this game, you and I have been college basketball fans forever. And I've talked about, growing up in Charlotte and being a Duke fan, and most of my friends being Carolina fans. And so there's obviously that rivalry between the two. And, we talked about when you're younger, in high school or junior high, if Carolina beat Duke or if Duke beat Carolina, or if either one of them lost to anybody, you hated going to school the next day because you knew your buddies were just going to crush you, and you hated it. And as you get older, you don't take those games so serious. And I honestly can't remember the last time that I got mad about Duke losing, like mad. And this game, when it was over, first of all, I think I was shell shocked how the way the game ended. But I was mad. And when I woke up the next morning, even before I went to bed, one of our good buddies sends a text kind of ragging on Duke. And this is probably 2 a.m, 1:30 in the morning. And I fired back at him about how he needs to worry more about Hubert Davis getting run over by Will Wade at NC State, who's building a squad right now. And anyway, next morning I woke up and it was almost like being in high school again. I'm like, all right, who's going to get me now?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just because Duke lost, just because the way they lost them, because like you just said, no one's ever choked like that before in 335 opportunities. Like that is, we probably will never see that again. And the other part about it is, I love this Duke team. You and I talked about how over the last 5-6 years, we haven't gotten into college basketball as much as we used to because we don't know the players anymore. Every year they change and they're different players. This was a fun Duke team to watch. You have Cooper Flagg, who is going to be the first pick in the draft. He's a great player, can do it all. You had Knipple, great freshman. Mayu. I mean, this was just, Sion James, we both love. Proctor had a great season. They were just a fun team to watch. And now, in the day and age we live in, this team will look completely different next year, and it'll be a new batch of freshmen that are top 5-star, whatever. And you never know how that's going to work out. This one worked out, and it just stinks that they went out like that, but they have no one to blame but themselves.
No, absolutely not. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm crying over spilt milk with the referees. They had plenty of opportunities to win that game. Minus that call, but that call absolutely had affected the outcome of that game. It had a big effect on the outcome of that game.
Yep.
And I think we can have both things exist. We can understand that Duke cost themselves, but also that contributed to that loss as well.
Yep.
You asked something right there, and I know we talked about the NIL a lot, with college basketball, in particular. Name, image, likeness, and guys getting paid, and how much, especially with quarterbacks and the amount of money that they're making nowadays, and the rules that exist. You go back to Ed O'Bannon, and that was kind of one of the things back in the 90s that he was really fighting for, and they'd taken it to court multiple times, and really, nothing had come of that. And Ed O'Bannon started that movement of we need to get paid as players because universities are making millions, and us as players are sitting there being forced to, sit in school for 2 years when we are not benefiting on our name, image, and likeness, but you are.
Yep.
It didn't seem right, and it wasn't fair. So therefore, the NCAA changed it. I think it was a good decision. I really do. That being said, I think there's a lot that needs to happen with those changes. Still, it's ongoing because it's so new.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like we have this right in front of us. What do we do with it? But the point the question I want to ask is that, to the viewers that are listening, ask yourself this question, right? I think if we can all agree that, it's fair that the players make money off of their name, image, likeness, because they're the ones out there with the blood, sweat, and the tears. And it's also, to the same point, they're getting an education, and I get that. But like in baseball, right? When you think about baseball, I think baseball probably has it as close to perfect as anybody with the current state that we are in. And I would want to revisit that if I'm the NCAA or if I'm some of these coaches and I'm a committee trying to make standards and rules based on where the direction of college basketball is going and or football. And football, because of the propensity of getting hurt, they force you to stay 2 years. Once you graduate from high school, you can't go until after 2 years. So you have to complete a full 2 years before you make your name to the NFL.
It's 3 years.
Or 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
Same as baseball.
Yeah.
If you're in baseball, either you make a decision to go to Major League Baseball, or if you go to college, you're stuck 3 years.
Yep.
And when I say stuck, now you can get paid, name, image, likeness, if you're a great player. Those are really the only guys that are going to have the opportunity to go to the next level anyway. So we're talking about the top 10%, top 5% of all these collegiate athletes. And the same thing exists in college basketball. Imagine this. If we're sitting here and just you mentioned the names on Duke and you mentioned the names on some of these other teams that are going to be competing. Some of these guys are going to graduate. You know, Auburn's going to graduate all their guys, not have the same team back. They're going to reload and things like that. And they're probably going to get some great players because of it. But Duke, remember in the 90s when you had the Fab Five and you could see all those guys coming back for their next year because they had to.
Yeah.
Right. Remember at UNLV, those guys sticking around for 2 years. You know why? Because they had to. Right. And it was unfair back then. I'll say that it was unfair back then that they had to do that.
Yeah.
But they were forced to do that because of the rules. It's no longer unfair. It's no longer unfair because now they have an opportunity to get paid with their name, image, and likeness and make pretty good money doing that.
Oh, great money.
On top of that, if you want to further that and make a bigger argument, you're also learning life experiences in college. You're getting an education, all the things that people, if you're going to be on the other side of that fence and, you're already getting okay, they're still going to get an education and they're still going to learn, some valuable lessons in college that we, maybe learned in those first couple of years. But imagine what what next year would look like if we had this Duke team coming back. The excitement, the anticipation, the buildup, the best things for the NCAA and the health of college basketball. And I wouldn't even say the health of the NBA, because a lot of times what happens in the NBA, these one and dones go, or they go from high school and they do what they're going to do. And we don't know where they went or who they are.
Yeah.
But now, if you're following Cooper Flagg again on your favorite basketball team in college, you're going to follow that guy wherever he goes. It's going to bring more name recognition. The sport, basketball right now in the NBA is so on the downward spiral, right? It's an unhealthy sport, if you will. But to make that a healthy sport, I would argue that you need to get back into that 2-year window for college basketball where they have to come. If they go to college, they have to go to 2 years. If they want to go to the NBA, you have to do it in high school. That's a decision you can make. But if you're going to go to college, you have to stay for at least 2 years because it's now fair that name, image, and likeness exists and you can still benefit from that.
I think that there's no doubt that in the next probably 6 to 8 months, we're going to see some changes to the way that the portal works and NIL works. I think you are going to, and I think your idea would be a great one. If you want to go to the NBA, go right out of high school. If you're not ready to go to the NBA, then you come here for 3 years and whatever.
Well, yeah, what 2 years?
Yeah, whatever they decide.
whatever that decision. But I think the 3 years might be, and because basketball is a little bit different, right?
2 years would be fair.
I would even be okay with 2 years.
2 would be fair. But the other thing that we're going to have to see is these players are going to have to start signing contracts, because the thing that's made it such a mess right now in football and basketball is that players are hopping from team to team every year. And so if a school commits $4 million, like Cooper Flagg, I think he's getting 4.9, whatever it was, $1 million. Or if they commit X amount of dollars to a player and he leaves the following year, well, you're branding this guy and you're trying to, you're teaching this kid the ways of your team and your tradition, and then he's gone. They're going to have to start signing contracts. And my gut would be that they'll sign a contract with a school and their only out would be to go to the NBA. So for instance, if they don't make it toward 2 years, you have to stay and they keep it the way it is. If you sign a 2-year deal to come play for me at Duke and you're going to make X amount of dollars and here's what you're going to have to do for it, the only way you can break this contract is to go to the NBA. You can't break it to go play for Texas Tech or somebody else. There's definitely going to have to do that. And, I was watching Rick Pitino in an interview with him before the game, and they asked him about the portal and NIL. And he said, first of all, I don't want to know how much the guys are making. I don't want to be involved in it. All I want to do is tell our general manager, just go get them. I don't care what you're paying them, get them. And then they asked him and Calvin Sampson about, or they asked Pitino about, has money changed these kids when it comes to coaching them? Like now you're getting an 18-year-old kid in there who's got $4 million, $3 million, $2 million bucks. You got other kids on the team who may be making 400,000 or 100,000 and nothing. And Pitino said, well, he goes, we sent, he sent one of his assistant coaches, this past off season to go watch Calvin Sampson's team practice. He just wanted to see, their buddies. He just wanted to see what is he doing because they play such great defense. And if you remember Pitino, man, pressing for, he's always been a really good defensive coach. Well, his coach came back and he was like, you're not going to believe this. And he goes, but man, it was the toughest, hardest practice I've ever seen. And the guys that were making $2-3 million were playing just as hard as the guys were making nothing. And blah, 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 blah. And so Pitino said the one thing that he doesn't like about it, and I can see what he's going to, I can see his point, but I also can see the other side. He said, the one thing I don't like about it is all these kids that are getting this money, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million. He goes, in regular life, and he's for them getting paid, but he said in regular life, and he used himself as an example, you start a job and you make this much money. And then you do a good job and you get promoted and you make more money. And then as your career goes, you should make more money is the way it goes. Well, a lot of these kids are going to make the most money they'll ever make in their life as an 18 or 19-year-old. And it's downhill from there because only 1% of these kids are going to go in the NBA, right? So a lot of these kids, this is going to be the most money they've ever made. And if they don't put it away and if they don't do the right thing with it, then they peaked at 18. And I've not heard a coach talk about that. And it was
what do you think the NFL? Point. What do you think the reason and the stats in the NFL are so
about guys going through their money? And
bankrupt. And
NBA too.
The same thing is that it's the opposite of the way society is set up. Our lives are set up to be earning as we grow and compound as we move on, not to have this bulk sum, lump sum, and then live off of that because what happens is that you get accustomed to a lifestyle of this high-end dollars, right? And you want to live this lifestyle like Jerry Rice or like Tom Brady or like Peyton Manning, but you're not going to consistently earn that Peyton Manning money. It's going to go from here to here. And it's going to be such a drop-off that you're going to be, what do I do next? That's why school is an education is important to a lot of these guys because what's going to happen next? The other thing that happens with that as a player, the ego gets involved. What is my next step? I've only done this. I don't know what else to do, right? And now I identify as a basketball player, I identify as an athlete, I identify as a football player. I don't identify as Frank, the hardworking guy that has done everything he can to get to that level. And I'm going to change that when I go to I don't want to work from the bottom up. I'm already at a disadvantage now because a lot, not maybe in high or college, but once you play 9-10 years in the league, these other guys that have been, just climbing that mountain and making the mistakes and learning and growing and learning and growing, you're coming into their game now where they're the pros. And you're going to be down here, at the bottom trying to work your way back up. Now you have an advantage because you have a little bit of money, but, as far as the work ethic and the mistakes, you still are going to make those mistakes. You're still going to need to have that work ethic. And, a lot of times for the ego of these athletes, that's beneath them and they don't want to put themselves through that.
Yeah. And that's part of what Pitino talked about as well is the ego piece of it. And he just said, we're not going to bring a player in here. If he thinks he's got this money, he thinks he's going to come in here and not work as hard as the last guy on the bench. And we're not going to bring him here. And I think that's what most of the good coaches will do. And then, they also talked a little bit about, a lot of these kids, and I'll use you or me as an example. If Dylan, my oldest son, went and played baseball in college, or Connor went and played football, or Garrett or Brad, whoever went and played a sport in college and was getting $2-3 million, we as their fathers are going to make sure that money is put into something to where, yes, they're going to have some money to spend, and yes, they're going to be able to enjoy some of it, but we're also going to make sure that their future is going to have that money so that when they become older, they don't go.
We think we're going to do that once they turn 18. We lose control of that.
Well, I'm not saying you lose control, but I think
you have an advisor to do that. Here's the problem. The reason why guys go bankrupt is not because, they make bad decisions with their friends and things like that. It's because they make bad decisions with their families.
Oh, no doubt. I mean,
and they get this money and they're so proud of mom taking care of that guy that they want to go buy mom a house. and they want to, foot her mortgage, right? Well, that mortgage doesn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
That mortgage keeps coming, and my bills, start growing now. And the more they grow, I have to continue to make that income, because here's my highest point, and I'm spending to this point.
Yeah.
Those bills are going to keep coming, but my income is going to do this.
And that was my point is, there are, I used our kids as an example. We would be involved with what they do with that money. Hopefully that would put them in a good position down the road. But there's other kids that don't come from a background like that. And now they're getting this big wad of money, and there's no one there to help teach them. Now, I know that a lot of schools now do offer classes, and I know that now they are allowed to have agents, that you would hope a lot of these agents do that. But we've seen many guys get robbed blind by those kind of guys. So they're going to have
those guys that are supposed to help those guys, you know what they're doing? They're stealing from them
a lot of times. And so it'll be interesting.
Invest in this. Do this, make this transaction. You know why? Because I get paid off of it every time you do.
You and I know a lot of players. You obviously from playing in the NFL for 10 years, me from running radio stations. We know a lot of players who have been duped and lost a lot of money.
Smart guys
who are very smart, that lost
get taken advantage of
$3 million, $4 million because people took advantage
Tony
of them.
Baselli, Mark Brunell,
Jimmy
Smith. The guys that played down in Jacksonville,
mm-hmm.
Bernie Madoff, I think, I don't know if it was him or not, but they invested in a big mattress company, and the guy was robbing. He was stealing them. He was robbing from them and stealing them blind. So,
well, there's no doubt in my mind that when they meet this offseason, the NCAA and the coaches and the general managers, now that all these schools are hiring, they're going to have to figure out something to clean it up, because it's the Wild West. I told you that I've dealt with NIL stuff with clients, and it's different in every state. There's certain things we can do in this state that we can't do in this state, and it's a mess. And it's so easy to take advantage of it. And when it comes time to say, because they can't just give you the money and you take it, you have to do something for it. Well, then when it comes time to figure out, okay, what is that worth? So if Frank Garcia, I'm giving you $2 million, and you're going to put up 3 posts for me a month about my company, but you have 8,000 followers, what is that worth? If somebody's got 1 million followers, what is that? And if you come and sit at my car dealership for 2 hours and sign autographs,
it's trying to figure out your social popularity and your name, image, likes. It's trying to figure out your value.
Yeah, and how do you put a value on when there's so many different things and everyone's different? So they're gonna have to figure out something. But I gotta believe contracts are gonna be a big part of it. So
we'll start an OnlyFans page for men.
Man, I don't know about that idea. You might lose.
No, for women. I mean, we're going to be the OnlyFans model for women.
Yeah,
so they're going to be
for like dad bods. And all the women out there that like dad bods, Frank and I'll take my white pasty skin and my freaking little beer gut.
If you like wrinkles,
man, freckles
and gray
and whiteness and hair that grows places where you don't want it. Yeah, there might be a market for that out there.
You just have to go to Japan or somewhere like that.
Yeah, you never know.
Big niche for that.
Let's get to.
I got to take a break.
Okay, break.
Take a break. Yep. Break that.
They call you back?
Yeah. I just got to make sure that I get.
Oh, dude, got me. Yep. All right, you tell me when. All right. So let's talk about the game tonight, the national championship. I almost feel like it's the forgotten game now, because as a Duke fan, we fully expected to be there, and now we're not. And so, honestly, I hate to say this, like I'm not nearly as excited about it as I would have been. And again, that goes back to feelings that I really haven't had about a college basketball team in a long time. And I was a Notre Dame football fan. Yes, I'm your Duke basketball, Notre Dame football guy that everybody likes to make fun of. But I've had that in football, obviously, with Notre Dame losing the national championship lately. But I haven't had that with Duke, but they're not there. So now we focus on Florida against Houston, 2 really, really good teams. We just talk for 45 minutes about how tough Houston is defensively, what a gritty, gutty team they are. That they live in close games, they relish the close games. Florida, on the other hand, great athletes, great size, they can run, they can shoot. They've got Clayton right now is playing better than anyone. I mean, if you had to pick 2 or 3 players from this tournament,
who's the MVP of the tournament?
I mean, he's it right now. And if he caps it off tonight with a great game, him and Flagg were probably the 2 I would have up top. And now that he's in the championship, he takes the lead. So you've got great players on both sides. You've got the story that Coach Golden for Florida worked and played under, I believe, Calvin Sampson a long time ago. He's a young kid, his 3rd year there. He's turned this program around and got him back to the national championship where they, won back-to-back a long time ago with Billy Donovan. He's got this program back where they need it to be. Houston, with the tradition they got going all the way back to Phi Slamma Jamma and Hakeem Olajuwon.
Did you see Olajuwon in the game?
You see, they wouldn't let him back there to celebrate. He was pissed. He was mad. Like, they wouldn't let him back there. How do you know, if you're the security guy, how do you not know that's Hakeem Olajuwon? And even if you don't know, the dude's 7 foot tall. He's got a Houston shirt on. You got to figure that this guy's obviously with the team.
Yeah.
And then how does nobody come get him and go, dude, it's Hakeem Olajuwon. We want him back here celebrating with the team, but they wouldn't let him back there. And he was getting mad. But great tradition at both of these schools. Calvin Sampson looking for his first. Both coaches looking for their first national championship, but Houston looking for their first national championship in a long time. I don't even remember what year it was when they won one. If they've even won one, I don't even know. I can't remember. We need to look that up.
Yeah, I think.
So look up if Houston has won a national championship. I don't remember. If they did, it was like before we were born. I know that because they did.
No, it would have been Olajuwon and
Olajuwon didn't win one. They lost to NC State.
I don't think they've won one.
Yeah, I don't think they've won one. But regardless, two teams looking for the big. Did you look it up yet, bud? Just curious. But two teams that have different styles. The over-under, I believe, right now is at 140.5. And that looks enticing when you know how Florida can score. But when you see what Houston does to teams, they do score 67 points. They've been putting up 90 to 100 points. Florida scored what? They always are 90 to 100 points. So Houston's going to keep this game lower scoring than we think. I don't know if I like that over-under either way. I probably would tend to go under because I think Houston's going to struggle tonight. I think Houston beating Duke was their national championship. And I don't mean that tonight's any less important, but what I mean is they had to put so much into that game, so much effort into that game to come back, time and time again, and to finally win it at the end. You just got to believe that it's going to be hard for them to get fired back up, even in a national championship game, but then to sustain it. Obviously, they're going to be fired up at the beginning, but to sustain that after what they just went through with Duke, I think it's going to be tough. And Florida, I know you hate when I say do factor, but Florida, we've seen them through all season long, where there was games where every guy was making shots. We saw even in this last game against Auburn, highlight dunks. I mean, they're like just a great fun team to watch. And, I think they're going to bring the A game tonight. And
Florida's won 2 national championships, 2006, 2007. Houston's never won.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Houston's never won a national championship. They played in a couple, back in the day against like NC State, as you mentioned, but they have not won a championship. Going back to the 1940s, 1930s, even before that, 1920s. So
Frank and Big D doing some research on them computers.
But when you look at this game, DJ, I agree with you. I think Florida, left it out there, and it's going to be really tough for them to. Houston really left it out there. And Florida did too. Yeah, both of these teams played a hard game.
Remember, to get to the Final Four, Florida had to come back from 12 points with under 4 minutes left or something like that. I mean, not as impressive as what Houston did, but pretty doggone impressive.
Yeah.
And so, they've had to fight their way. They beat UConn by 2 points earlier, and UConn had been on an incredible run in the NCAA tournament. So both these teams have had a tough path to get here. Both these teams have shown resilience. Charlie, who we're going to talk to in a little bit about golf, Charlie Nance, our golf guru. I was talking to him earlier, and he had a funny quote. He's like, Houston is like, if you ever saw Rocky 2 and Apollo's wanting to fight Rocky again, and his manager's like, nah, I don't think we should do it. And he's like, why? And he's like, man, because you beat that dude to an inch of his life. I've never seen anybody beat somebody like that. And he just kept coming. And I don't want to fight that guy again. And Houston is like that team. Like you think you got them knocked out. And that was the thing. Duke could never deliver the knockout punch. There was plenty of times if Duke could have just hit a couple threes or whatever, the game's it's over. Houston's not going to go away. But I think Florida is going to come in tonight, and I think Houston will be I just think as the game goes on, they're going to get worn down, and Florida's going to.
Remember the two boxers you mentioned, the Rocky. Probably a lot of people have seen that more than they've seen Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward.
Those fights were incredible.
And the wars that they would have.
They were incredible.
The back and the forth, it was really like they were boxing with their hands down and taking turns slugging each other in the face as hard as they could.
Yeah.
And to see who was going to be able to fall first. And neither one of them would.
Yep.
Neither one of them, they both refused to go down, and they took some massive shots. Houston has taken some massive shots. Florida has taken some massive shots. And the reason why they're still standing is because of their intestinal fortitude. And the word that we talked about before this tournament started, the one thing that has to exist for every championship team, regardless of what sport it is, the number one quality that those teams exist and display is toughness.
Mm-hmm.
And both of these teams are tough to the bone. Right, you don't look at Florida's coach and see that maybe necessarily in his DNA and his makeup.
Looking,
I mean,
20-year-old
guy, 20-year-old guy. But when he's coaching, that fire comes out. And we all saw, Samson the other night, wanting to kick that ball like it was a dodgeball when it rolled at him after, he didn't get the call on one of the plays that he felt like he should have. He probably should have.
Yep.
If we're all being honest, but. Yep. When you look at these two teams and the pedigree, defense wins championships. And the game is changing. It's going to be about analytics and 3-point shots. And, the NFL is changing. It's about analytics and 3-point throwing the ball down, the field and going for it on 4th and 2 and 4th and 3. Offenses are going to be, able to win more because defense still wins championships. Florida doesn't get enough credit.
Yeah, I mean,
for how well they play defense. They're long, they're physical, they're tall, they keep balls alive, and they have the one difference maker, right? This game tonight is going to go depending on how well he plays. Clayton is going to be ultimately the X factor of all X factors when you watch this game. There's not another player on either team like him. He can light it up from the outside. He can dribble, drive, penetrate, and he can also dish and makes great decisions. He's a great free throw shooter, and he has that toughness. He has the make love to pressure type of mentality, right? And as we've talked about before, there's two types of pressure: the type you apply or the type you feel. If Florida is applying pressure, they're better than Houston.
I agree.
Florida is better than Houston, but how much better? You can't count Houston out because there's that toughness that exists in them. I think it's going to be a great game, but I think Florida wins by 5.
Here's what I'll say. We all know Houston and how great they are defense. If we're giving them a letter grade, Houston's an A+ defense. Florida has not been great defensively, but like you said, I mean, they really aren't a great defensive team.
They played much better offenses too.
That's true. But they do create tough matchups due to their length and their height. So they're not nearly as good on defense as Houston is, but they do create issues with their height. But on offense, man, they're high flying, baby. And Houston, Houston shot the 3-ball well against Duke. I mean, I think at one point, I forget what they ended up with.
Especially towards the end. I mean, when it counted.
13 at one point. So Houston did shoot the 3 well against Duke. They're going to have to do it again tonight. It will be interesting to see what Calvin Sampson does against Clayton. Does he try to defend him any differently than maybe he would have? With Duke, there were so many weapons, and Florida has weapons. I'm not saying that, but it'll be interesting to see how he does defend Clayton. Is he try to get the ball out of his hand? The big guy for Condon for Florida, he's had 2 bad games in a row. 2 bad games in a row, which is not common for him. So again, you got to think he's going to bring it tonight. But we saw what Houston did to Duke's big man. Maluach had a bad game. He had 6 points. He didn't even have a rebound. So it'll be interesting to see that and how Houston's defense affects him down low. But he can also run like a deer. And I agree with you. I think Florida is going to just be able to sustain the energy longer than Houston. I think Houston's got to be deep.
Houston has lost 4 games this season. 2 of them have been to teams in the SEC. Alabama, 85-80 early in the season. They lost by 5. Alabama's not as good as Florida, right? I think we'd all agree upon that.
Yeah.
And they also lost to they lost to Alabama and they lost to Auburn.
Yeah.
They lost by 5 to Auburn. Auburn beat them 74-69. Low scoring game. Auburn's a good offense. I think against teams I think Auburn and Florida are very evenly matched, right? As far as their athleticism, their skill, their players. I think that's the type of game you're going to see tonight. More like an Auburn game, what's still going to result in a loss, 74-69 in the favor of Florida. And I think they're going to win their 3rd national championship tonight.
So if that's the case, it will be under the total. Florida is only laying 1.5.
No, 74-69 would be 3 over the total. 140.
Oh, yeah, sorry, it's 140.5. That's right.
140, so that's a 140
That's right.
total.
That's right. And then the spread's 1.5. I bet Florida yesterday minus 1.5. I think I've been riding them pretty much the entire tournament. And that's what stuck too about the Duke game is, I go in down a little bit of money. I sweep all 3 bets in the Florida game. I'm feeling great. I got 3 more in that if Duke just wins, I'm not only out of the hole, I'm up.
Mm-hmm.
And you're feeling pretty comfortable. But like I said, I mean,
9 points.
Yeah, and
under 2 minutes.
But I tweeted at halftime, and I told you, I just said, man, but this is one of those games where Duke's not shutting the door. They're not making a big shot that's it, and they're letting them hang around, and that's what happened. And lost every bet. Now I'm back down in the dang on hole.
You paying the piper?
Well, I don't have to pay yet, but luckily I hit a little baseball bet yesterday, and I've got a couple more in today, and then I've got Florida tonight. That I think, again, I think Florida wins by double digits. I just think Houston
by double digits.
I do. I think they're gonna have their A game, and I think Houston is just gonna get worn down towards the end. If they shoot the 3 like they did against Duke, then you know what? They'll be in the ball game. If Clayton has a bad night shooting like Proctor did, and I'm not comparing those two as players, but obviously if Proctor would have shot well, Duke wins the game. If
Proctor had good looks, and he wasn't taking bad shots. He wide open looks.
Totally wide open.
He just missed.
Totally wide open.
I mean, he just missed. He was missing. He couldn't hit.
And back to Duke for a second. It'll be interesting to see what Proctor does. He's a junior. I don't know what people think he'll be in the NBA. I haven't seen anything where he's a first-round draft choice. I haven't seen any of that. So it probably will behoove him to stay and make the money. I know Shire loves him, and he seems to love Duke. But he'll.
What does he have coming in?
I don't know exactly. And
if he has another Knipple and he has another flag coming in that plays his position,
they've got, I think, 3 of the top 6 players. They've got Boozer's kids, Carlos Boozer, the ex-Duke player.
Yep.
His twin kids are coming, and they're both ranked very, very high. One of the kids was ranked 2nd behind the kid that's going to BYU. So he's loaded, and Duke hasn't touched the portal yet. I've read some articles about some players that people think Duke is going to get in the portal, but they haven't gotten anybody yet. So we'll see what happens with that. And then I want to touch base with 2 ACC teams that we haven't yet, because I know we've got a lot of Carolina fans and NC State fans. The Tar Heels have been pretty active in the portal on both sides. They've lost some guys, and they brought some guys in. The one thing that they've done is they've definitely addressed the height issue that they had. They bring in the 7-footer from Arizona through the portal. They've got the number 1 power forward kid coming out of high school that's committed to them. So all the Carolina fans and anyone that watched Carolina this year knew that lack of height was a huge problem for them inside. Well, it seems that Hubert has at least fixed that on paper. They need a point guard. And so with Kadu going to Michigan. And so they need a point guard. And I see that I think they're in on a kid that's at Yale, like a 6'4" point guard from Yale, I believe it is, or Princeton. I think it's Princeton. So they've been very active in the portal. And then NC State, man, I know both of us have been fans of Will Wade and what he's done. And he's won everywhere he's been. He's had some trouble as well that he's had to overcome. But when NC State hired him, we both agreed that it was just a great hire and he's going to kill it here. And man, it seems like every time you go on Twitter, he either just signed another 5-star he just signed another 5-star recruit or another guy in the portal. Like already his team looks loaded and he's not even done yet. And you know what? In his press conference, he didn't run away from it. He goes, this isn't a rebuild. Because of the portal, he goes, we'll be in the NCAA tournament next year, and we're going to compete. That's the kind of team we're going to have. And man, he took one of his boys from McNeese State already. Like I said, he is not messing around. So if you're an NC State fan, you know, 2 years ago when they went on that magical, crazy run, when they had to win the ACC tournament to even get in the tournament, and then they went all the way and to the Final Four. Just to in the ACC tournament, they had to beat Virginia, or was it to tie Virginia to get to overtime? So that magical run, and then to be followed up with just a crap season they had this year, awful season. They fire their coach. So now you got Will Wade coming in there, and the NC State fans that I do know are fired up, and they should be, and Carolina fans as well, because Carolina's got a really good recruiting class coming in, and Hubert has addressed the height thing. Now everyone's sitting back and going, "What's Duke going to do?" Because they know Duke's got these great recruits coming, but everyone will agree that to be a really good team, you're going to have some seniors and juniors that have experience. Sion James was one of those guys for them this year. Proctor was one of those guys for them this year. They thought Gillis would be when they got him from Purdue. He was a bust, but it'll be interesting to see what Duke does in the portal now, because Shire's going to have his hands cut or his work cut out for him, because he's going to lose Maliwatch, Flag, Knipple for sure.
You know what's interesting? You're talking about all these great players coming out of high school and transferring and things like that. And, you know, it's kind of hard to kind of identify what their parallel is going to be when they get here. And here's why. You know, as a role player, you know, you're expected to do a lot of different things, and you're not getting, you know, the touches as maybe you would if you were at one of your others at the school you're coming from, where you might have been seen as the guy. And when you change your role because you want to fit the identity of what a team is trying to do and their personnel and where the coach thinks that their best chance is to win, and that was typically how do you handle that? Are you able to only touch the ball 4 or 5 times and make shots, make the right plays?
Yep.
Or do you need to be a guy that gets in a rhythm, in a groove, and you know, touches the ball a lot in order to play your game, right? So it's really hard to kind of gauge where these teams are going to be, even though they're upgrading and quality athleticism. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be a great team and they're going to play well together.
Oh yeah, you're right. I mean, how many times have we seen McDonald All-Americans and 5-star can't miss prospects?
They come from high school and they're the guy. They score all the points, get all the touches, they take all the shots. The offense is built around them. When they get to college, you're only going to touch the ball 5 times.
Yeah, you have to play in a system.
You're going to play in a system, and this system, if you don't conform to this, is you're not going to play much.
Isaiah Evans produced a great example.
Yep.
When he was at North Mac, the kid scored 25, 30 a game. He was unbelievable.
And it doesn't mean that he's not capable.
No, not at all.
I mean, that's a good example.
And a lot of guys, it takes them a year or so to figure it out. And I'm hoping he stays at Duke and next year starts and has a great year. But it'll be interesting. But you've got Florida. I've got Florida. We both think they cover.
That means take Houston.
Yeah.
And load up.
Seriously, load up on Houston then. When we get back, we're going to bring on Charlie Nance, one of our good buddies, golf guru, America's caddy, host of Take Dead Aim golf podcast, but a great guy and just loves golf. Not only is he good at golf, and not only does he love the statistical parts of golf, but he just loves golf. I mean, he loves golf. So we're going to bring him on. This is a great week. The Masters. Charlie will join us right after this.
This is Suit Up Sports. Suit Up Sports. Where opinions are as sharp as a tailored suit. No fluff, no gimmicks, just unfiltered, hard-hitting takes on sports and a whole lot more. It's time to suit up. Now here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
Welcome back to Suit Up Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout along with Frank Garcia. And our next guest, his voice may be familiar because he is the one that voiced over that opening that you hear whenever you watch or listen to our show. Charlie Nance, America's caddy. How are you doing?
Hey, man. How are you?
Good. So I know this is probably your favorite week of the year.
Frankie and I refer to these as high holy days. This is high holy days. People can argue there's some great weeks in the sports calendar throughout the year. I know there's some overlap with like baseball and football and hockey playoffs and basketball playoffs. Well, I get that. But for me, when you got the wrap up of the NCAA tournament, you got the Final Four and then the final on Monday and then Masters week. That's just the best week in sports.
Yeah, I mean, there should be rules of the household. Like, don't bother me. Don't walk in front of the TV. You can only ask questions when. And it's literally, you know, this is kind of like the guys' weekend where we're just going to sit back, relax, and you know, and not play golf, but enjoy it on television.
Well, you know, it's unique in this way. Even people that aren't big golf fans or golf participants, they know and they watch the Masters. It's unique in that way. You know, people who aren't race fans, they can't even tell you when the Daytona 500 is on. But the Masters, there's something about it that is just, if you're a sports fan, it's required viewing in some way, shape, or form. And if you're a golf fan, it's the tournament of the year.
Well, let's talk about that because, I mean, that's something that I feel like I've really never thought about, but you're right. And is it just our want to be like the higher ups, the snooty people, the elites? It's like Instagram on crack.
Yeah, yes. I think that the appeal to the Masters is that it is in the same place every year. It remains relatively unchanged to the casual viewer and casual eye. It is, and you both have been there in person. It is really stunningly beautiful, and it carries over on TV. And the best thing you could be is a great TV product. There's not a better TV product other than football than Augusta National. And I think that just contributes to it.
Well, it's funny how you talk about how beautiful it is, and I was lucky enough to go on a Wednesday years ago, and one of my old bosses, Mike Kellogg, is in town, and he was taking his son there today for the practice round, and unfortunately it's gonna be raining. But we were telling his son how when you see it on TV and you see how beautiful it is, and then when you go there in person, first of all, you feel like you're driving down the highway and then there's a strip mall and then bam, you walk into Augusta. Like you would never think that Augusta is where it is. Then you walk in there and it's one of the only places that I think you really walk in, and after being in there for an hour or two and walking around, TV really doesn't even do it justice.
No, first off, look, if people don't understand this, I can't be more honest. It is the most beautiful golf course that is directly across the street from a Food Lion in America.
It's true.
Right across the street from the Food Line. But I describe it as that Wizard of Oz moment.
And a Hooters.
Yeah, just down the road from Hooters, where Daily will be posted up.
That's right.
But it's that Wizard of Oz moment. We're so used to having lived through months of dormant grass. Our life is browns and grays, and we're walking in through the gates of Augusta National, and all of a sudden you walk through, and it's like that moment in the Wizard of Oz where it goes from sepia to Technicolor, and it is so vivid. It's the first time it happens to you, it's almost an assault on the senses that you can't take. I know I tear up every time I'm faced with it because it's so beautiful. The smells are so vibrant, the sounds, it's perfect. And even as a golf guy, it's just perfect. I just don't want the moment to change.
Charlie, it's sad what's happening in sports, in my opinion, as we move forward. And I know I'm maybe stuck in nostalgia with the history and the romance of what amateur sports used to be and where professional sports used to be to where it's going. And, dollars have made that, probably one of those things that's going to continue to grow. And, older guys maybe not like that as much, but tradition is something that I think is being lost in all sports, whether it's the rivals in college football that we used to love, the history of the rivalries, and some of these other sports that we used to love. Those are kind of going by the wayside, but tradition is what they base their entire existence on.
Oh, look, tradition is alive and well and will never die inside the halls of Augusta National. For example, as we're recording this, it's Monday. Tomorrow night is the meeting of the most exclusive and greatest fraternity in sports, bar none. It's the one that every golfer would give his right arm to be a part of, and that is the Champions Dinner. It doesn't matter if you're over 65, so you can no longer play in the tournament, or you just won a year or two ago. For as long as you are a Masters champion on Tuesday night of tournament week, you show up, go to your locker in the champions locker room, because you have one permanently. There's your green coat. You put it on and you go to dinner, and you're sitting around a room with 40 guys, 30 to 40 guys, who only 30 to 40 guys on the planet have that shared experience. They have putted out on 18 or in a playoff, and they have been declared Masters champion. It's the greatest thing in sports. It just is.
Well, let me, before we dive into who we think is going to win and some of that stuff, both of you guys have played it several times. I don't know exactly how many, but I know you both have played it multiple times. I was actually offered to play it probably 10 or 12 years ago with Darius Rucker, and I turned it down because I was so I didn't want to go out there and embarrass myself or kill anybody with errant shanks. I look back and I look back and I should have played. You don't get that chance that often, and I wish I would have done it. But give us tell us a story or two about maybe the first time you played there, or the best shot you've had there, the best score you've had there, because there has to be. When you're playing that course, first of all, and no one's allowed on that thing. So it didn't you're probably going to see a celebrity or have some type of encounter, but give us a story from Augusta for both of you.
Okay. Well, I played 6 times. I played 4 times as a member of the media. And let me describe how I don't think they do this anymore, but the way it used to work is every local media outlet in Augusta. And I lived and worked there for 5.5 years. Every local media outlet in Augusta for helping out with promotion of the tournament and whatnot, received 2 passes during thank you weeks. They're they have two members in the year, one in the fall and one in the spring. The spring is their jamboree. It's held the second week in May. I guess the first or second weekend in May. And then the last 2 weeks of the month of May are thank you weeks for all the volunteers, whatever. And for 2 days, they divided us up and they let the media come out there and play the golf course. I describe it as, you remember Caddyshack where they let the caddies swim in the pool for 15 minutes? That's essentially what they would do. They would invite the local media, and I'm telling you that 90% of the people that would come out, this was their first round of golf in their life. It was like
Wow.
cameramen who won lotteries at TV stations to go do it. But anyway, you were allowed on the ground starting at 9 a.m. and lunch was provided. You could eat lunch anywhere you wanted to. I went and sat in the champions locker room every year and had my
Wow.
lunch in the champions locker room. And then you could play the short course, the par three course, as many times as you wanted, and you had a tee time that was designated on the big course, and so you got to play there. So I did that 4 times. Um, the best I ever, and I played twice as a guest. The best I ever shot was the last time I played there, and it was the year before they quote unquote tiger proofed it. So this was May of '01. I left a putt on the lip on 18 and shot 78, and that was the best I
Wow.
ever shot there.
And Charlie's a very good golfer. He's, probably one of the more consistent guys you'll ever play with. Maybe not the longest guy, great putter, and obviously straight off the tee. But talking about scores at Augusta, it's interesting, Charlie, how differently just by pin placements they can set this course up, and they can put them in some. The pins in some treacherous places where if you don't hit it to the exact distance, it's good luck making bogey and stopping the ball. If you're high, if you're low, same type of thing. You better have the ability to chip it up there and be a surgeon like Phil Mickelson. And I think that's what's so interesting about this course for me, other than the beauty and all the nostalgia and all the other things we talk about, is how challenging this course can be, but also how fair it can be at times.
Yeah, look, I was playing in a program with Gary Player one time in Birmingham. This has been 20 years ago. And we were talking about how you can get on the wrong side of history so fast in Augusta on those greens. And Gary Player told me that the greatest bet, the greatest sucker sports bet in golf is this. He will let you be on every green in regulation. So you're on every green in regulation. He will place his ball. He will place the ball where he wants you to start from, and he will have the pin where he wants you to finish. And he said, there's not a chance in hell you break par.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, those greens are ridiculous. Let's jump into the tournament a little bit. And, now that we have all these different ways to gamble with, the apps and everybody, places a $10 bet or $20 bet on a golfer to win. I was doing some research and I saw that 10 of the last 12 master winners had at least a 1.7 tee to green rating 3 months leading into the Masters. Okay. And so I looked and at the guys who have had that right now. You got Morikawa, Rory, Scheffler, Neiman, Lowry, Fleetwood, and Cantlay, I believe was the other one. And 10 of the last 12 Masters winners have come from a list like that. Obviously, Scheffler, you would expect to be in there. Obviously, Rory, you would expect to be in there. Morikawa has played great at this course and won before. So I think we know that. But who do you like that maybe isn't on that list? Is there any underdogs, any guys that you think that are playing great right now that have a shot?
There are, look, my feeling on this tournament is pretty simple right now. If Scotty Scheffler is putting well, you're not going to beat him.
Mm-hmm.
He is this generation's Jack Nicklaus. He will fairway and green you to death. The late Val Kilmer played Iceman in Top Gun. To me, Scheffler's the Iceman.
Mm-hmm.
He will just put it in the fairway, put it on the green. And if he's putting, if he is having a better than average putting week, he's going to be very hard to beat. Now, along those same lines, a real Iceman, one to look out for, who I wouldn't be surprised if he wins one of these. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins like 5 or 6 majors in his career. I am all about Ludwig Aberg. I
Mhm.
think that he is as straight a hitter of the golf ball as I've seen in a long time, and he just doesn't have any flaws in his game. He's a really good chipper and putter, drives and hits it straight. I think he's great. Now, you mentioned one name that I would have, and as far as picking dark horses, and it sounds like almost weird to mention these three names because it's not like they're nobodies. Waco Neiman is quietly playing unbelievable golf on the Live Tour. People just don't see it. And
Mhm.
speaking of the Live Tour, Bryson DeChambeau has come close to winning this thing in the last couple of years. He's a two-time U.S. Open champ. You
Yep.
would think that this is the kind of place that he could figure out. And my other one is Brooks Koepka, who always plays Augusta well. And he's a big game ball player. He shows up for these sorts of things.
Well,
Yep.
it's Charlie. You mentioned the Live Tour, and it's interesting because we don't get to maybe watch it as much as unless you're an avid golf fan. You're going to sit there and tune into the Live Tour. It's not like on ABC or CBS, but some of these players, as we've seen in years past, have been dominating the leaderboard when it comes to our majors, the U.S. Open, the U.S. Open, Augusta. Just to mention a few here in the States, but we don't get to see them, and we don't really necessarily know who's hot. You mentioned DeChambeau and Koepka, two guys that I love watching play golf just because of how far they hit the ball.
Yeah.
I think that probably after the U.S. Open, for me anyways, DeChambeau kind of took it up a couple notches.
Yeah.
And I've never been a DeChambeau fan, but I found myself starting to root for him, in that tournament. Just maybe it's because of my disdain for Rory, or I don't know, but I wanted Rory to fail and I wanted DeChambeau to win that. And since then, I've started watching him a lot more, and he has so much game, and obviously the length that he brings, but when you sit there and you talk to the golf gods and you say that par is 70 a couple of years ago, he's never really kind of lived that down, and that's kind of been his biggest one of the biggest things that people have knocked him for, and even some of the other golfers, is that you're not that guy yet, bud.
Well, I like the fact that you brought up the golf gods because they are alive and well, and they live in the trees at Augusta National. And here is why, and I'm sort of ambivalent on Rory, but here's why I think not only will Rory not win this year, but he will never win at Augusta. There is a stat that is unpublished I'm going to give you guys right now. Nobody who has ever had the Masters in their grasp and then had a huge disaster has ever come back to win another Masters. I'll give you some examples. Tom Weiskopf had the Masters, had a 13 on 12 or 13. Curtis Strange had an 11 on 13 when he was leading the Masters. Jordan Spieth exploded on the 12th hole at Augusta several years ago, and he hasn't done anything really at Augusta since. And Rory, God bless his heart, in 2011, hooked a drive on the number 10 tee with the lead at Augusta, left of Pelosi into the cabins over there,
Yeah.
and he has never won at Augusta since. And I believe that the gods, once they're in your head, once you have exploded for a big number that costs you the tournament, I think they're in your head for life at that place.
Yeah, Frank got called to the principal's office, in case everyone's wondering why he just scurried out of here. Big D, our producer, had to yank him out for something. But a couple guys that I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned Aberg is one. He finished second last year, I think, at 7 under. And then Morikawa, who I talked about earlier, who hasn't won a Masters, but he's won, I think, 2 majors.
Yes.
And he leads the tour, by the way, in that stat that I mentioned earlier about strokes gained tee to green. It'd be great. I like watching him play. And it seems to me when he putts well, he's tough to beat.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up. That's what I was going to bring up. Colin Morikawa is this generation's Vijay Singh, a tremendous ball striker, and also a tremendously streaky putter. When his putting is on, he, like Scheffler, he's hard to beat because he is going to fairway and green you to death. But that's always the knock on Morikawa. We will know early on Thursday in his round whether or not Morikawa has a chance to win the tournament. If he is making putts, then look out. If he's just sort of middle of the road, then he's not going to win.
All right, other guy I want to ask you about the 2023 champion John Rahm. Hasn't been playing great. He finished, I think, 45th last year in his title defense. I think the whole going to the live thing. I think last year was just a mentally challenging year for him. When he's on, he's hard to beat as well. You think he's got anything for the guys this year?
I there's something between his ears. And I really thought, because he had, when he first came out on tour, he was this incredible volcano. I mean, I watched him I couldn't wait for him to blow up because it was always epic. But then right before he went to live, he seemed to have this peace about him and a maturity to him. And I was like, okay. And then he won the Masters and then he went to live. And I really honestly think in his heart of hearts, he thought that he was going to be the linchpin that made the two tours bury the hatchet. They would look at it and say, we can't have John Rahm defecting. We've got to do something about this. And I thought that he thought it would be like a 2 or 3 month thing and everything would be back to normal. And it obviously hasn't happened. And I think it's gotten in his head. And
Yeah.
I think there's something between his ears that's just still not right. I hope I'm wrong, because like you said, when he's on, I love to watch John Rahm play golf.
What do you think about Jordan Spieth, past winner? You think he's got a shot this week?
Well, look, Jordan, he's one of those guys, kind of like Mickelson, that, flips a switch when he comes to Augusta. But Jordan falls into my category of, he had the tournament. The last time that he had a 5-shot lead standing on the 10th tee, and then made a 9 on number 12 and lost the tournament. And that's hard mentally to come back from. And by hard, I mean, no one has ever come back from blowing a Masters with a huge number to win it again. So until someone proves that they can do it, I'm not buying it.
I gotcha. So give us who you think's going to win, and then if you want to give us a sleeper as well, the long shot guy that would be worth putting a little money on.
Scheffler, Auberg, DeChambeau. Throw money on Joaquin Niemann.
That's your sleeper. All right. I like it.
Right.
I like it.
And more than that, I want to make sure everybody understands. Frank and I were talking about tradition earlier. Make time on Thursday to watch the replays of the starters. Gary Player and Jack Nicklaus, they're not exactly spring chickens anymore. And you don't know how many more years you're going to have of seeing the two guys who are really the last link to golf's golden era of Hogan and Nelson. Those are the last two guys that remember playing with those people. Palmer's gone. And so these are our last two links to that era, and they're not going to be around forever. So savor the starters on Thursday.
Wasn't it Gary Player last week that kind of crapped on Augusta a little bit, saying that it was the fourth major out of all of them as far as what he thinks being the best course and best tournament? Wasn't that Gary that said that last week?
It wouldn't surprise me. Gary's prone to having wild opinions and making statements like that. And, Gary's a member at Augusta, and they're not in a 3-time champion. They're not exactly going to kick him out of the club. So,
well, Charlie, tell everybody where they can follow you online for your golf updates. And also, Charlie is on the radio here in Charlotte, 103.7 WSOC. He does afternoon drives there with his wife, Debbie. She carries the show. But
yes,
tell them where they can follow you.
Okay, lots of outlets here. On Twitter X now, at CLT_golf guy. Taking Dead Aim is a golf podcast that I do that is on both Instagram and Facebook. I also, in addition to the day job you hired me for, also do a countdown show with Kyle Petty. Kyle Petty's Back Then Again Country Countdown. That airs on 185 stations across the country.
It's great, by the way. Y'all do a great job with that.
Thank you. That is at KP Country Countdown. I think that's it.
All right. Well, we'll tag you too on some posts too, so people can follow you if they didn't get all that. But thanks for joining us. And I think maybe we'll have you on later this week, maybe Friday, to give us a little update. And one last question, because I haven't looked yet. I know it's raining there today. What's the weather supposed to be like this week?
I think we're good to go. They actually had what's in Charlotte right now. They actually had that all day yesterday. Yesterday afternoon, they issued a statement that said they were closing it today for patrons. And I always feel bad when I see that because people, get those tickets. But this morning they said, no, we're open. So I think that the worst of the weather is gone. And, the beauty of Augusta National is they have those sub-air systems, not just on the greens, but in their fairways. So they'll be able to suck any and all moisture out of that golf course, and it'll be fantastic. And hopefully we're in for a great Masters weekend.
Well, I can't wait. I will be in Key West watching, hopefully from a nice pool with the cocktail in my hand, and they better have the golf on the TV there, or I may have to start a little ruckus. But thank you for joining us, man, and we'll have you on Friday too if you can make it work.
We'll make it work. Thanks, boss.
Thanks, buddy.
This is Suit Up Sports. Suit Up Sports. Where opinions are as sharp as a tailored suit. No fluff, no gimmicks, just unfiltered, hard-hitting takes on sports and a whole lot more. It's time to suit up. Now here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
So Frank Garcia is back from Principal Dylan's office, and Charlie.
I'm still intact.
Yeah, still
he didn't
intact.
Wear me out too bad.
I was expecting you to look worse, but Charlie, Nance, thank you again for joining us. Great job breaking down the Masters and storytelling and all those things. And he does.
You can tell he loves golf.
He loves golf, man. But I wanted to end the show with both of us talking a little bit about our picks and who we like in the Masters. I know you and I both do a lot of these pools with our buddies where you put an X amount of dollars and hope you draft your team or whatever, and then we bet this golfer or that golfer on the gambling apps. So that's made golf a lot more fun. We've always done pools, but now you can bet anything. You can bet who's going to win on the
DraftKings and a lot of the other sites that you have are available for you.
While you're watching the tournament, you can bet who's going to have the longest drive on this hole. Who's going to,
and you can do matchups. You can do individual matchups. You can go day by day. You can do your overall winner.
Yep.
You get better odds on those things, obviously. But it's become involved so that if you like to gamble and wager on it, it makes it a little bit more interesting.
A lot more interesting, especially for a casual golf fan. But I played my first round of golf yesterday in 8 months. I had 2 back surgeries, and so yesterday was my first time. The doctor told me to go hit a bucket of balls.
So don't take you.
Huh?
We're not going to take you to win.
Don't take me, man. I can guarantee you that. I played better than I thought I would after that long of a layoff. Like I said, I was only supposed to play 9 holes. I went ahead and played 18. Back's a little stiff today, but while I was playing and talking with the other guys about the Masters and a couple of the guys that we played with, Mike and Jackson Kellogg, were actually going to the Masters today for the practice round. Hopefully the weather worked out for them, but just starting to talk about it started getting me fired up. And my wife and I are going to be in Key West this weekend. And so I'm hoping she doesn't get mad at me when I'm like sneaking around trying to watch golf as much as I can. But I'm looking at these pools I'm in, and I'm trying to put my team together for one of the main pools I'm in at the lodge.
Do you get to pick any player, or do you have a draft?
It's tiered. So I'm going to send you the invite for it, but it's tiered. So you pick one guy out of this tier, one guy out of this tier, and then it's a combination. I guess it drops the lowest guys. But the thing that I was reading earlier with Charlie about the 10 out of the last 12 Master winners have had at least a 1.7 shot save tee to green for 3 months coming into the tournament. I like stats, and they obviously don't always pan out, but 10 of the last 12 winners having that kind of at least lets me narrow down some guys I'm at least going to wager on. Charlie thought that Scheffler, obviously is the first pick, and I think everyone's going to agree that if you're going to pick one guy,
if he's putting well, he's tough to beat.
He'll win it,
no doubt about it.
Morikawa was one that it was interesting to me because he leads PGA in that stat ahead of Rory and Scheffler, and he's a guy that is, when he putts well, he wins, but that's always an issue, right? I
don't know if you watched last year's Masters. He had an opportunity towards the end down the stretch. He had himself in contention. Then he got to I believe it was the 12th hole on Amen Corner, little par 5, little dog leg left. He hit a great shot and then 3-putted. And he was on the center of the green, a little bit above it. He left it short and then missed the little 3-footer. It was a tough putt, but he never gave himself a chance. He did that a couple of times in that tournament down the stretch where he just felt the pressure adding, and he had a great opportunity. He probably played as well as anybody tee to green, but this is not necessarily tee to green. This is, if you can get up and down, obviously your short game is going to be challenged, but who's putting the best under whatever conditions that they're going to be under on these types of greens are going to be the guys that win. And as you heard Charlie talking about, with putting a ball a certain place on a green and not being able to break par.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right? I mean, he's not lying. There's some of these greens are so undulated that you're aiming 30 feet, 40 feet right to get it to go 6 feet left.
Yeah.
And die into the hole. Right? You look at Tiger's shot, that magical shot when in your life, the ball trickles. He was aiming, probably 40 feet left of the hole to get it to die, to kill it in there, and then trickle down to the hole where it was building speed.
Yep.
If he was above that hole, he couldn't have stopped that ball.
Nope.
Right. So, those are the things that, are going to challenge a lot of these players, and the guys that hold it together the longest and putt the best and leave themselves in the right positions are going to be the guys that go out there. That's course familiarity. And I think that when you look at the guys that have a chance, the Schauffele's, the Aubergs, the Rahms, DeChambeau, Morikawa, McIlroy, Scheffler, the big names in golf, that's going to be interesting to see, how well these guys play. But you always also have the guys that play this course well because it fits their eye, and they know where to hit it, and they don't make mistakes.
Yep.
The older that these players get, the less distance they have, and that's a challenge for them because they're hitting a shot or a club or two more than what they normally would when they're playing well. But length isn't really, the thing that's going to save these guys. It's going to be the putting. And
Morikawa, to me, anyways, I'm going to bet him to finish top 10. I think that's a safe bet. I think as long as
he your A flight player.
I haven't even looked at that yet. I'm just talking about my bets, my wagers, not the pools. I think Morikawa is a guy that I'll put in the top 10 because I think he will putt well enough to at least do that. We'll see if he gets any better. Scheffler, again, the odds aren't going to be as good on him. I think he's like plus 350 maybe.
He's the odds-on favorites, plus 440.
So plus 440.
Then Rory McIlroy's at plus 600. Morikawa's 14-1, so 1400.
Yeah.
DeChambeau, Rahm, Auberg is the next.
Auberg, I'm definitely going to take a chance on.
17-1.
I thought Charlie's stat on the guys that have blown up at Augusta have never, ever come back to win it. And so I'm staying away from Rory. Maybe a top 10 finish, but because he's playing really good right now. But I'm not going to bet him to win it. Aberg for sure. I think Aberg's a great option.
Look what happened to Rory at the Open, U.S. Open, when he was playing against DeChambeau. I mean, how many times did he three-putter miss the little ones, to win? It's maybe it'll change, and maybe he'll learn something from those moments. But a lot of times when you have those demons and those memories of those misses versus, hey, when I was in this position, I made it's a big advantage or disadvantage one way or the other. So
before we go, give me who you want to win and who you think's gonna.
I want DeChambeau to win. I want him to win. I want he kind of turned me off a little bit a couple of years ago when he said par 70 is his par for Augusta. And I think that did a lot of people the same way. I love golf. I love watching guys play and play well. I think of all the guys that are in the top group in today's golf, I think he has the most charisma. He has the ability. He has the most ability. He's not Tiger Woods, right? And I think that's the one thing that's missing in this tournament, obviously, is having the flair and the swag and the following that he had with when he was playing well. But I think DeChambeau, because of what he ball and how far he incinerates it when it hits off his club.
And even about the way he makes his own clubs and how his irons are all the same. Like his story is
so quirky,
no doubt.
But to see him under all the pressure in the world at the U.S. Open, interacting with the kids, and embracing that, and you think that sometimes guys are quirky and weird and things of that nature, but this guy is just a normal dude that probably got a bad rap because.
I think he probably earned some of that, but I think he learned from it, and I think he changed.
That's fair.
Even the stuff he does, break 50 on where he brings a celebrity out and they have to break 50. And when he did the thing about chipping the ball over his house onto his putting green, and how many days until he could make it.
He's more relatable now than he ever has.
100%. So I agree with you. He's the guy that I'm probably going to want to win.
He's the guy who I want to win. Who do I think is going to win? It's hard to bet against Scheffler.
It is. Let's take Scheffler off the board.
Okay. I'm gonna say I'm gonna pick a dark horse, and I'm gonna say either Koepka. I think he's due, or I'm gonna say Auberg. Auberg might win it.
He's a popular pick, and look, he's a great golfer. I think played at Texas Tech in college, but I'm gonna go. DeChambeau is a guy that I'm also going to be pulling for. But I'm torn between Neiman and Lowry to win because I like both those golfers. I think they're both playing great. Lowry always plays well, it seems, in the majors. So if I've got to choose.
You're not taking Morikawa with all you.
Well, I'm betting him top 10 for sure.
Okay.
I'm betting him top 10. But if I'm going to pick a winner that I think is going to have pretty good odds, and Morikawa does, if he's plus 1,400, that's good odds. But I'm going to go with Lowry. I'm going to go with the Irishman, my Irish brethren.
35 to 1.
I'm going to put money on it, and we'll
there you
see.
go.
But thank you guys for joining us. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy the game tonight when Florida takes on Houston in the national championship. Frank and I will probably watch with one eye closed because we're still ticked off that Duke's not in there. But enjoy the game. Enjoy the Masters starting on Thursday, and we'll be back with you Friday.